The valley trembled, yet not from thunder or storm, but from the silence of 40,000 men frozen in fear. A single giant's laugh echoed like chains across the hills, and every heart bent under the weight of his shadow. But in the middle of this paralyzed army, a forgotten shepherd boy stepped forward, unarmed, unseen, unafraid. Why would a king crowned with glory hide, while a boy clothed in dust walked straight into destiny? What secret gave David the courage to face what no warrior dared to fight? What truth could turn fear into faith, despair into hope? This is not just the story of two men. It is the eternal clash between faith and fear, between the darkness that shouts and the whisper of God that saves. In this video, you will discover why Goliath's 40 days of terror were more dangerous than his sword, why Saul's trembling heart destroyed a nation, and how David's hidden training in silence prepared him to shake the world. You will see that the sling and the stone are not relics of the past, but symbols of every small beginning that overturns giants in our lives today. And here's the question for you. What giant is standing in front of your life right now? Fear, addiction, failure, despair? Comment below with the battle you're facing, because you are not alone in the valley. Together, we will uncover the timeless truth that giants fall not because men are strong, but because God is greater. So, stay with me. Like this video if the message awakens something in your soul, and subscribe so you never miss another story that can change your faith, your courage, your destiny. 40 Days of Terror. Goliath's psychological warfare. For 40 endless days, the valley became a stage for one man's domination. Goliath did not simply fight with a sword, he fought with fear. His laughter was not the sound of joy, but the sound of chains rattling around the hearts of Israel. His shadow spilled like ink across the battlefield, stretching farther than his spear, staining the courage of every man who dared to look his way. His voice was a hammer striking again and again against the soul, and every blow broke another piece of hope. This was not merely a warrior, it was a storm of intimidation, a living weapon of psychological warfare. Armies collapse long before swords ever clash, and Goliath knew it. He conquered minds before bodies, and that is why 40,000 soldiers trembled without lifting a shield. The same strategy still rules the world today. Modern propaganda, digital disinformation, toxic words spoken by leaders or even by people close to us. These are the giants that chain our spirits. Wars are still fought in the mind long before they are fought on the field. A young person paralyzed by the fear of failure, a mother crushed by anxiety, a community silenced by lies. These are today's echoes of Goliath's roar. And the truth is piercing. The greatest battles are not lost when the enemy attacks. They are lost the moment we surrender inside. That is why the lesson of these 40 days is eternal. Guard your mind, because whoever controls your thoughts controls your destiny. What about you? What words or voices have tried to crush your faith? Share your battle in the comments, because breaking silence is the first stone you throw against your own Goliath. And from this shadow, the story flows naturally into a man whose silence condemned a nation. Saul the fallen king, a portrait of fear. Once, Saul was the chosen one. Head taller than any man, crowned with promise, admired for his strength. Israel looked at him and thought, "Here is our deliverer." But when the valley trembled, he trembled with it. Imagine the scene. A king alone in his tent, his hands shaking over a cup, his crown heavy as chains pressing his head down. The same man chosen for his appearance, now reduced to hiding while his people begged for courage. The fall of a leader is not always sudden. Sometimes it is a slow erosion of faith. Saul's downfall began long before Goliath appeared. His disobedience to God, his hunger for approval, his fear of men greater than his trust in the Almighty. And when the true test came, there was no faith left to stand on. A nation mirrors its leader. When Saul trembled, Israel trembled. When Saul hid, warriors hid. This is the weight of leadership. Your fear can infect thousands. Your faith can ignite nations. History proves it. Armies that once seemed invincible have fallen because their leaders chose pride over obedience, appearances over substance. How many of our communities, our families, even our nations still suffer because those in power fear men more than they fear God? This truth cuts deep. Leadership built on image collapses, but leadership forged in obedience endures. There is a warning here for every soul listening. Whether you are a parent, a teacher, a friend, or a leader of many, your faith or your fear will shape those who follow you. Ask yourself, do your words give courage or steal it? Do your actions call people to stand taller or cause them to shrink back? Comment with the kind of leader you wish you had when facing your own giants, because your answer may reveal the leader you are called to become. And in the silence of Saul's tent, another voice began to rise, not the voice of a king, but of a shepherd trained in shadows. David the shepherd, training in the shadows. David did not come from a throne, but from the fields. While others marched in armor, he walked with sheep. While the army trembled, he learned the language of silence, the rustle of wolves in the grass, the sudden roar of a lion, the crushing weight of a bear. Alone under the stars, he faced death not once, but many times, and each scar etched into his skin was a prophecy of the day he would face a giant. The Valley of Sheep was his first battlefield, and his weapon was not pride, but vigilance, courage, and sacrifice. Long before men sang his name, he sang to God with only the sheep as his choir. This is how God trains his chosen, not in palaces, but in obscurity, not in applause, but in loneliness. What seems hidden is holy. What feels forgotten is preparation. David's sling was not a miracle he discovered in the valley of Elah. It was a skill forged in countless unseen battles, sharpened by years of faithfulness when no one watched. The field of sheep and the valley of giants are not so different. Both demand courage to stand. Both require trust that God is greater than the danger before your eyes. The real-world truth is this: unseen preparation equips you for your moment of destiny. The student studying late into the night, the single parent holding the home together when no one applauds, the artist practicing in silence, the believer praying in secret. All of these are David's training in the shadows. Your scars are not shame. They are proof that God has been building you for something greater. So the lesson is clear. Never despise the days of small beginnings. Your hidden struggles may be the very training ground for your public victory. If you have ever felt unseen or forgotten, know this: you are being sharpened for your moment of impact. Comment below if you have lived through a season where no one noticed your battles, because your story may be the sling in someone else's hand. And from the fields of obscurity, David stepped into the valley where voices of mockery and faith would collide. The clash of voices, faith versus mockery. When David entered the camp, he did not walk into silence. He walked into a storm of voices. His brothers mocked him, sneering that he was only a boy chasing pride. Saul's guards dismissed him, their laughter cutting deeper than any spear. Around him, every voice echoed doubt, reminding him he did not belong, that he was too small, too weak, too late. But David carried another voice within him, a voice forged in prayer, in psalms whispered under the stars. Where others shouted curses, he listened to the whisper of God's promise. This is the clash of voices every human faces, mockery that seeks to kill courage and faith that breathes life into the soul. Words are weapons sharper than swords. A cruel sentence can break a child's spirit. A harsh judgment can crush a dream before it begins. Yet faith-filled words can raise the dead hopes of a weary heart. Think of moments in history when a single declaration changed the course of nations. I have a dream, lifting generations. We shall overcome, uniting the oppressed. Fear not, calming trembling disciples on a stormy sea. The truth is eternal. The voices you choose to believe will decide whether you stand or fall. What voices are you listening to right now? Fear that chains or faith that frees? Comment below the words that once lifted your soul, because sharing them may be the spark someone else needs to rise. And from this clash of voices, David reached not for armor, but for something far simpler. The sling and the stone, God's unlikely weapon. Saul offered David his royal armor, bronze shining in the sun. To men it looked like protection, but to David it felt like chains. He laid it aside, choosing instead the tool of a shepherd, a sling, 5 smooth stones, and the faith that had never failed him. The science of the sling is extraordinary, a weapon so precise that in skilled hands it could strike with the force of a bullet. What seemed childish was, in truth, deadly. Goliath trusted his armor, his sword, his spear. David trusted what God had already placed in his hand. This is how heaven works. God overturns giants, not with the technology of man, but with the simplicity of faith. A stone against a sword, a whisper against a roar, a prayer against an army. And even now, the same principle rules our lives. In business, culture, and family, the underestimated tools often carry the greatest power. The small business born in a garage that topples an empire, the quiet voice that sparks a movement, the single act of kindness that changes the course of a life. Never despise what seems small. Your sling may be the very weapon God intends to shake the world. The lesson is radiant. God uses what is already familiar in your hand to accomplish what seems impossible. Look at your own life. What talents, scars, or experiences do you hold that the world might overlook? Comment them below, for what you see as weakness may be your stone of destiny. And from this unlikely weapon came a moment that silenced the valley forever. The giant falls. A kingdom awakens. The stone flew, and time itself seemed to stop. No clashing of swords, no grand duel, just a single strike that shattered the terror of 40 days. Goliath fell, not with a cry of triumph, but with the thunder of silence. The valley that had trembled with fear now trembled with awe. One act of faith broke the paralysis of an entire nation. What no army could do with weapons, a shepherd accomplished with trust in God. This moment is not about gore, but about reversal. Fear had enslaved Israel, but faith set them free. History remembers such moments when Martin Luther King Jr. stood unarmed before injustice, when Gandhi resisted an empire with nothing but truth, when ordinary people chose courage and reshaped the destiny of nations. Giants fall not just on battlefields but in classrooms, in workplaces, in homes. Everywhere one person dares to believe that God is greater. The lesson is clear and timeless. The fall of one giant can awaken courage in thousands. Your victory is never just your own. It ripples outward, giving strength to those who were too afraid to stand. Think of the battles you face today. What if your act of faith is the key that unlocks courage for your family, your community, even your nation? Comment with the giant you believe must fall in our world right now, and let your voice join the chorus that awakens others. From the dust where a giant fell, the song of a new kingdom began to rise, and the boy became a legend. The valley still whispers, not with the roar of Goliath, but with the echo of a single stone that rewrote history. Imagine the silence that followed. The giant collapsed, the dust rising, 40,000 men standing in disbelief as fear dissolved into faith. In that instant, the forgotten shepherd became the heartbeat of a nation. What no army, no king, no weapon could achieve, one boy accomplished because he dared to trust the voice of God over the voice of fear. And that is the legacy that still calls to us today. Giants are never as strong as they seem, and faith is never as small as it feels. Think of your own valley. Maybe it's not a battlefield of bronze and blood, but the loneliness of an empty room, the crushing weight of failure, the endless war with addiction, the silent giant of despair that tells you tomorrow will not change. These giants speak with the same mocking tone as Goliath, laughing at your weakness, pressing shadows over your dreams. But like David, you are not defined by what you lack. You are defined by the courage to step forward when everyone else steps back. The stone in your hand may be a prayer whispered in tears, a dream you refuse to bury, a kindness you choose to give when bitterness would be easier. Do not underestimate it. That small act of faith can break chains, topple giants, and awaken courage in people you may never even meet. History has always been changed by those who dared to believe. A shepherd defeating a giant, a prophet speaking against kings, a carpenter's son carrying a cross up a hill. Each one looked foolish in the eyes of men, yet heaven knew their names would echo forever. The world tells you power is found in armor, in wealth, in status. But the story of David and Goliath reveals a greater truth. Power is found in faith, in obedience, in the refusal to bow to fear. And this truth is not locked in the pages of Scripture, it is alive in your story right now. What giant are you facing today? Fear of failure? A broken relationship? A battle no one else sees? Comment below with the struggle that weighs on your heart, not as a confession of weakness, but as a declaration of courage, because speaking your giant's name is the first step to watching it fall. You are not alone in the valley. Just as David's act of faith awakened an entire nation, your step of courage can awaken hope in someone else. When you share your story, you place a stone in another person's hand. This is why we return to these ancient stories, not as distant myths, but as living mirrors. The Bible is not just history. It is prophecy written into our daily lives. The sling and the stone are reminders that God works through what seems small, that he delights in using the ordinary to accomplish the extraordinary. If he could raise up a shepherd to silence a giant, what could he do through you? Every scar you carry is a sign of preparation. Every night of obscurity is training. Every prayer spoken in secret is sharpening the weapon you will one day use to bring down the very thing that mocked you. And here is the mystery that shakes me to the core. The battle of David and Goliath was not just about one boy and one giant. It was about heaven declaring war on fear itself. Goliath was a shadow of the Nephilim, the ancient corruption, the rebellion of heaven's fallen ones. By striking him down, David stood not just for Israel, but for the promise that darkness would never triumph over light. In that valley, God showed us the blueprint. Giants fall, fear breaks, hope rises. This is the same battle Christ fulfilled on the cross, the same battle we live each day when we choose faith over fear. So let these words heal the broken parts of you. You are stronger than you know, not because of your own strength, but because the Almighty walks with you. The sling in your hand, the stone in your grasp, the prayer in your heart, they are enough because He is enough. Giants fall not because men are strong, but because God is greater. And every valley of trembling can become a valley of victory if you dare to step forward. If this story touched something deep in your soul, if it reminded you that your scars, your tears, your hidden battles are not wasted, then let this be your moment to respond. Like this video if you felt the power of David's courage awaken something in you. Subscribe if you want to walk with me through more hidden truths, because together we can uncover the light buried in Scripture's mysteries. And if you want to give back, to send even the smallest spark of encouragement my way, so I can keep sharing these stories of faith and hope, your support, no matter how small, is beyond price to me. Every gesture, every word of encouragement, every ounce of energy you share becomes part of the sling that helps me keep creating. Thank you with all my heart for walking through this valley with me. May the same God who gave David victory give you courage to face your giants, strength to rise when fear says hide, and faith to know that no shadow can withstand the light. The valley trembles still, but not with fear. Now it trembles with the footsteps of those who believe. And among them you stand, stone in hand, ready to change your world. The aftermath. From shepherd to legend. The dust had barely settled when Israel erupted into song. Saul has slain his thousands, David his tens of thousands. With one strike, the boy became a legend, his name echoing louder than the crown itself. Yet victory is never free. It always reshapes identity. David was no longer just the shepherd who sang to sheep beneath the stars. He was now the warrior whose courage broke chains of fear, the young man whose triumph awakened a kingdom. But with glory came the shadow of envy. Saul's eyes burned with jealousy, and what began as celebration quickly twisted into rivalry. The cost of destiny is often the loneliness of being misunderstood. This is the paradox of triumph. What elevates you also isolates you. The moment you step into your calling, you will draw both admiration and resentment. Think of great leaders, innovators, even saints of history, praised by many, opposed by others, forced to carry the weight of victory with both honor and sorrow. The lesson is sobering. Success does not end battles. It begins new ones. For David, the sling that won him a kingdom also placed a target on his back. The boy who once only fought lions and bears now faced a king's wrath, political storms, and the heavy burden of being chosen. And yet, hidden inside this tension lies a truth for us today. Triumph always carries responsibility. Every breakthrough, every answered prayer, every victory reshapes your identity. You cannot remain who you were once you step into what God has called you to be. Perhaps you too have tasted this, moments where success opened doors, but also drew opposition. Comment below if you've felt the weight of victory changing your life, because your story may strengthen someone else walking into their own destiny. And from the celebration of songs, the story shifts to a darker mystery, one that stretches far beyond a single valley into the shadows of ancient giants. The shadows of giants. From Goliath to the Nephilim. Goliath was not the first nor the last. His towering frame was an echo of something older, something hidden in the earliest chapters of human history. Long before David's sling, before Israel's trembling armies, the earth had once been haunted by the Nephilim, the giants born of heaven's rebellion and earth's corruption. The Book of Enoch speaks of angels who fell, of forbidden unions that produced a generation of monstrous strength, and of bloodlines so corrupted that God sent the flood to cleanse creation. Goliath was a shadow of that ancient story, a living reminder that the war between heaven and earth is older than kings and crowns. Why does this matter? Because David's victory was not just personal, it was prophetic. By striking down Goliath, David struck at the remnants of that ancient corruption. His battle pointed to a greater war, a larger plan of redemption that stretched from Genesis to Revelation. The Valley of Elah was not just about one giant falling. It was about God declaring once more that no darkness, no corrupted power, no shadow of Nephilim could stand against his chosen. And this is where the story touches us today. Giants are not always flesh and blood. They can be systems of oppression, addictions that enslave, lies that twist truth, or despair that crushes hope. These are the Nephilim of our age, giants that whisper, "You cannot win." Yet David's story reminds us that their fall is inevitable when faced with faith. In history, giants have fallen. Empires that seemed eternal collapsed. Ideologies that enslaved millions crumbled. Walls that divided nations came crashing down. Every time it began with one act of courage, one voice of faith, one stone flung into the impossible. So ask yourself, what ancient giant casts its shadow over your life today? Fear, shame, addiction, injustice. Comment below the shadow you believe must fall, because naming it is the first step towards slaying it. The story of David and Goliath is not locked in the past. It is alive, pulsing, prophetic. It whispers to every soul, "Giants may rise, but God is greater, and every shadow of corruption will one day bow before the light." From the shepherd's sling to the eternal promise, the battle is not just David's, it is yours, it is ours, it is humanity's call to faith.